Yo, what's going on, YouTube? It's your boy Big Dom. We are here to talk about the latest boxing news, like usual. But as we always said before we start this video, make sure to like, subscribe to my page. If you show good energy, I'll show good energy back and do the same thing. So let's get into it. So, August 16th, 2025, got a big fight coming up. Gervonta Davis versus Lamont Roach, the rematch. We know how the first fight went. It was very controversial. Also, let me preface this video as I always do, because I know a lot of fight fans like to have a lot of bias in their takes. So I try to keep bias out of mine. I am a big Tank Davis fan, as well as I have a large level of respect for Lamont Roach. I respect anybody who steps in that ring. With that being said, I like the sport of boxing more than I like any one boxer. And that usually kind of keeps me from being unbiased. I may have my moments here and there, but I'll even let you know when I'm biased. But the last fight, I personally think Tank Davis lost that fight. I know there's a lot of controversy, as we said. We seen Tank take a knee in round 9, as well as run back to his corner. I've never seen anything like that in my almost 30 years of watching boxing. As long as I've been watching boxing, when you take a knee, it's considered a knockdown. When you go back to your corner, turn your back to your fighter, it's automatic disqualification. So I think Tank lost this fight. I think, of course, you got to protect the money. I think this is a great example of protecting the money. He got saved by the house, in my opinion. For this fight to be a draw, think about if they would have counted that knockdown, how they would have. Ideally, they should once again disqualify Tank when he went back to his corner. That's just something you can't do, man. It's highly unprofessional. I think it kind of showed a bit of Tank's heart somewhat. Tank is one of those fighters who's used to having things his way. I think this was the first fight where Tank got some resistance. He met somebody that had just as much dog as he had in him. And I think it was very telling how he responded. We may have got a glimpse of who Tank Davis is under pressure. Of course, we've seen him. I'm not as hard on Tank with his resume as a lot of other people are, but I do think that Tank hasn't fought anybody with the type of skill set that he has. I do think Tank is an A fighter. Some people weren't very high on Lamont Roach. I watch everybody, man, and I told everybody before this fight that, yo, I thought Tank would beat Roach, but I also told everybody that Lamont Roach wasn't a pushover. Lamont Roach is a good boxer. He hadn't been defeated but one time, and that was against Jamel Herring. And Jamel Herring was a bit bigger of a guy than Lamont Roach. So Lamont Roach had a lot of issues with the length of Jamel Herring, as well as the movement that Jamel Herring, gave him. So, boxing is about styles and matchups. And I feel for the first time, Tank got in that ring with somebody that wasn't intimidated of who Gervonta Tank Davis was. And I think Lamont Roach was one of those guys that, had just as much dog as him, as Gervonta Davis. And people always say he got that dog in him, or he got that dog in him. To me, that just means when the pressure is on, are you going to take it wherever it needs to go? Some people have it, some people don't. Sometimes you don't even know you have it until you get into those situations. And some people like to fake like they have it sometimes. But that's one thing I like about boxing. You can't really lie about anything when you're in that ring. You can't fake it. It's going to show if you train hard or if you didn't. It's going to show if you can take a punch or if you can't. That's why I love boxing so much. It's just an honest sport from the culmination of it. Like when you rip everything away, man versus man, skill set versus skill set, you can't really lie about anything. I think that I'm hearing a lot of people say that Tank Davis is going to knock Lamont Roach out in this fight. Of course, I'd be a fool not to think that, Tank is capable of that. Tank has generational power. That's one of the reasons we love to watch Tank Davis fight. We want to see him knock somebody out because that's what we're used to. But I think it's going to be a hard day in the office for him to get a knockout against Lamont Roach. I think Lamont Roach kind of exposed some of the weaknesses that Tank has issues with. Tank is a very skilled boxer, but also he usually gets off to a slow start. In a lot of fights I watched with Tank, he's down on the scorecards. He gets a late knockout, and of course it saves the day. But as he starts approaching more elite fighters, he's not going to be able to do that because fighters like Roach are going to be able to, have good enough defense to stay away from that one punch. And I think that was one of the issues that Tank had with Lamont Roach, because Lamont Roach actually has pretty solid defense. He stays composed. He's excellent following game plans, and he has patience. He's almost like a little cerebral technician, whereas Tank is used to, starting slow and downloading information to use it against fighters later in the fight. Lamont Roach is processing pretty well also. And I think he met somebody that processes just as well as him. And then you have to realize these guys were familiar with each other. They fought in the amateurs. They grew up kind of in the same areas. So they weren't strangers to one another. So Lamont Roach has a very high ring IQ. That's one of the things I've noticed. He makes those subtle reads and adjustments. And, you have to realize he has over 150 fights in the amateur. So, and Lamont Roach is always well conditioned. That's one thing I can commend him on. You don't really see Lamont Roach get tired in fights. He's went 12 rounds multiple times. And I think another thing that people are saying is that, Tank he got his mind right now. He's going to come into this fight not playing games. And I say that, boxing is an unforgiving sport. Why are you coming in playing in the first place if that's what you were doing in the first fight? Why did you not take this fight serious? So I can't really ride with that. I think Tank really got in there and gave his all, and he was just matched up against somebody that was having an awesome night, combined with the skill set he has, and you see what kind of happened. And that's why I say, all in, I think even if Lamont Roach had the best night of his life, he still beat Tank Davis. So I think that's why this next fight is going to be such a tough fight, because Lamont Roach is coming in with confidence right now. He knows what it takes to beat Gervonta Davis. And the worst thing you can do against somebody that question themselves is give them confidence, because that's exactly what Tank Davis did with Lamont Roach. So I do think Gervonta Davis is going to have to knock Lamont Roach out to beat him. I think if it goes 12 rounds, I think that Lamont Roach actually may be able to edge this out. So we'll see. I hear a lot of people saying that Calvin Ford is back in Gervonta's corner, and that's going to be the X factor and blah, blah, blah. I don't necessarily succumb to that either. It wasn't like Coach Calvin wasn't around at all. Like, Coach Calvin was in the corner this last fight. People say he wasn't the main trainer and all that. I got mad respect for Barry Hunter. But let's not act like Calvin Ford wasn't right there also. Excuse me, he was. So I think that may be a mental thing that Tank has to tell himself to pump himself up to get him to where he needs to be to go in there and fight against Lamont Roach. But it's going to be an uphill battle, man. I think this fight is going to show us if Tank is who we think he is. If Tank is who he thinks he is, because I think he's kind of gotten used to kind of having softer fights and having his career kind of guided to a point of where it is now. Like, Tank is 30 years old, so it's time for him to start fighting these bigger names, the people that are on his level. We'll see, man. I've had the privilege of seeing Tank fight live. I went to the Mario Barrios fight here in Atlanta. And Tank is the real deal. Like, he fought Barrios, who's a much bigger man than him, and, knocked him out. So I'm not here to hate on Tank or say this or say that. I'm just calling it like I see it. In the Isaac Cruz fight, I think, we got so used to seeing Tank knock people out, where in the Isaac Cruz fight, he displayed how good of a boxer he is. He had to fight Isaac Cruz at one hand when he hurt his hand, and he still was able to, keep Pitbull off of him and do enough to win that fight. But ideally, I think Tank has issues with people that are volume punchers. And one of the issues he had with Pitbull Cruz was Pitbull Cruz actually does get in there and punch. He doesn't stop coming forward. And I think Lamont Roach kind of figured that out. So you've seen Lamont Roach finding the distance and not being afraid to go at Gervonta Davis, and you can kind of see Gervonta was hesitant sometimes to get in some of those scraps. And I don't think Lamont Roach has the power to necessarily one punch Gervonta out, but at the same time, you see what happened in round 9. You've seen that, you know, even throughout the fight, that Gervonta was a little hesitant to get in trades until later. So that means that Lamont Roach coming up to 135, putting on those extra 5 pounds, seems like he had a little pop in those punches also. So I think that, you know, all in, I'm ready to see another good fight. I think that Lamont Roach has all the skills to actually beat Gervonta Davis. So I'm going to go out on the wild side, and I'm actually going to go with Lamont Roach in this rematch, barring any crap like they did in the first fight. Because as I said, I do think Lamont Roach technically won that fight against Gervonta Davis. I do think Gervonta Davis should have a loss on his record instead of a draw. But that's water under the bridge now. It's big business. I hope, you know, both guys about to make a lot of money again. But I just hope that we get a ref that doesn't interject himself into the fight like the last one did. I hope we get a good, you know, clean fight so we don't have to talk about anything but boxing after this fight. Good luck to both men. Once again, I do see Lamont Roach rising to the occasion again and giving Tank another dog fight. And we'll see who Tank is when that happens. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if y'all think I'm crazy or not for going with Lamont Roach. I'm hearing a lot of talking back and forth, even amongst my friends. My friends have kind of been waiting for me to make this video because they've been asking me what I think as the fight gets closer. I'm going with Lamont Roach. And that's just how I see it. I'm pretty sure I'll be making more videos about this as the fight gets closer. Sign the paperwork, Tank. The fight's 6 weeks away. So what's the hold up, man? And that's something we'll talk about in another video. All the antics that Tank is kind of doing right now to hype himself up, in my opinion. I wouldn't be surprised if Tank Davis pushes this fight back a little bit also. So we'll see, man. Let me know what you guys think. Once again, thanks for checking in on the Big Don Boxing page. Like, subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.